Welcome back to the CUBE studio here at the New York Stock Exchange, overlooking the options floor where we connect Silicon Valley to Wall Street. This is our Mixture of Experts series in partnership with NYSE Wired, and today we're diving into the attention economy. Joining me in studio, I have Jethro Rothe-Kushel, CEO of Ritual Aids. Welcome.
Thank you, Gemma. Pleasure to be here.
So you told me off camera there that you actually have a degree in filming and AI from 2003, which is kind of fascinating to me, right? Because in 2003, it was a word none of us really knew much about. So take me on the journey you've been on from a professional perspective.
Yeah, so let's go back to 1999. I came into Dartmouth. At that time, I was working in the computer science lab in this hybrid of AI and image sciences, video sciences, and also in the media and in religious studies. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out how in the world would you combine those three areas. But specifically in AI, I thought I was late to the game.
Wow.
At that point in the computer science department, looking at AI, this combination of all kinds of interesting studies, right? And it turns out AI was created at Dartmouth many years before that in the 1950s.
Wow.
So I thought at the time we were late to AI.
AI
Turns out we were early.
AI and religious studies, so like an LLM of Jesus. You're like asking
like
questions and he'll spiritually advise you on your
That's
future.
right.
I love it. So tell me a little bit about Ritual Aids. It is essentially a performance marketing engine, right? But you, I guess, in this intersection we're in now, the convergence of storytelling and brand. Talk to me about the kind of, what distinguishes this company?
Yeah, so when I got started in commercials, we were doing major campaigns, Apple, Adidas, American Express. And at the time, it was frustrating because it would take many months of time, all kinds of budgets, well over $1 million. And at the end of all of that, sometimes, you'd get together and the stars would align and they'd work. You'd go into the production process. We all know this process. It's just insane. And you've got 100-person crews spending 14-hour days. And I couldn't, for the life of me at the time, figure out how we could code our way out of it. Although what I did learn was how to make a mean cappuccino to keep the crew caffeinated while they spent long nights away from their families.
Yeah.
And the reality is, since then, nothing's really changed. This year at the Super Bowl, on average, $8 million. And the success rates have plummeted. You're talking about industry-wide, more often than not, after all of that energy, these ads fail. But what if you could transform the paradigm and, yes, do it in a fraction of the time and cost, but have the results be through the roof, right? So we're talking about guaranteed results. Why wouldn't you do that? And the answer is, of course you do that. And in this space, as large brands are looking at their budgets into 2026 and beyond, they're seeing the writing on the wall that the kind of solution that Ritual Ads offers is not only optional, it's foundational.
And I guess the multi-billion-dollar question is, how do you do that? Talk us through the execution of this.
We use a combination of predictive AI and emotional intelligence.
Okay, like sentiment,
yes,
like analysis, or
exactly,
okay.
Exactly, and we're leveraging broad bases of data from across 140 industries, because it turns out what happens in one industry successfully in the commercial space can then be applied to another for innovative solutions when it comes to creative content. Then we feed all of that from the predictive AI and emotional intelligence into our generative AI and diffusion models throughout pre-production all the way through post-production and distribution. And we cycle through that whole process for better and better outcomes.
So it's kind of like predictive BI on steroids in some respects, right?
That's exactly right.
So talk me to your kind of category of customers, clients, and I guess how that buyer persona is changing too, right? Because the world of brand, media, storytelling, impact is changing so fast.
It sure is.
What are you seeing?
So we're working primarily with Fortune 500 brands, and they're coming to us more and more because of exactly the kinds of problems that we've been discussing. Oftentimes they'll be right up against the wall on a traditional production process, and it's just becoming too time-consuming and costly, and we're able to deliver results in a fraction of the time and cost. In fact, in some cases, we'll deliver pre-visualizations within hours or minutes.
Okay. But these are AI generated images, AI, it's done completely remotely. Like, talk me to what like a crew looks like now.
Right, so let me be clear. These are not AI slop, which is what's becoming ubiquitous these
I've heard of the
days, right?
slopoctopus. Yeah, I know all about it.
So these are high-end, large-scale brand assets. So end-to-end what it looks like, there are, and by the way, there are a lot of new job opportunities in this space. There's very little talk about that, by the way.
I'd love to hear. I mean, I personally, I have a lot of young nieces and nephews. I would love for you to tell us, what do those jobs look like?
So we have AI artists. We have all kinds of technology jobs as well, all kinds of creative jobs. And it's funny because our team is growing faster than we can hire.
Wow.
And they're coming to us from major spaces, from Paramount, from Amazon, because these behemoths are becoming too large to be able to pivot quickly. We've been able so far to stay nimble and to really meet the moment where it is.
So for one asset, for one digital marketing asset, let's say you once upon a time, not so long ago, had a 100-person crew, right? 5 days of filming, whatever it might be. What does it look like now? What is the reduction data here?
So we're talking about, most importantly, we're talking about a 45% success rate industry-wide to a 95% success rate. And on top of that, we can test 2, 5, 10, 20, 30 pieces of creative at once and then feed them back through depending on what's performing best. We can swap out people and products at a moment's notice. We don't have to reshoot. It's a game changer when it comes to the production paradigm.
So tell me a bit about the attention economy, right? The fact that now, you know, a lot of people purchase from social media, TikTok, influencers, micro communities, micro influencers. You know, there's a lot of deals being done, you know, at a mass scale to these platforms.
That's exactly right.
From what I can tell, it's very much about the hook, right? It's about that 3-second grab. What do you say to clients in that space? Like, what do you think is really working to grab attention in such an attention-driven economy?
So the fundamentals are not changing, right? A powerful story that's well told for a very specific audience. And these days, we can be more and more specific with our audiences. We don't have to go out to broad communities of millions of people. We can get into niche audiences, which means, you know, tens of thousands, thousands, or even an audience of one.
Do you think it matters who is telling the story? You know, for such a long time, we saw these huge brand partnerships, huge ad deals with, you know, celebs, big names, you know, where most of the spend goes on the personality asset, right? Do you think that's changing now with, you know, social and storytelling and this idea that, like, you know, YouTube and TikTok, that anyone can suddenly have impact?
I think at the end of the day, people respond to people, and that's something that's not only not going to change, but going to get more and more scarce and more valuable in this attention-driven economy that we're talking about. Now, that being said, there are people that audiences resonate with. That's also not going to change. And so we are working and locking up partnership deals with not only influencers, but stars of all kinds that already have built-in audiences, and we're working with them and working where the technology is today. Today, as an example, we're shooting real people in against white Sykes, and then we'll animate components of it to be able to deliver the end product. But more and more, we're moving to have more and more creative control in the AI space.
So let's get into the technology a little bit.
Let's do it.
So, we've seen some phenomenal developments in the video space with AI, especially of late, right? And some of the feedback, on Sora and these other very impactful technologies that are going to become very mainstream. It's interesting, right, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of excitement and a lot of skepticism. What is your technology stack look like? How do you talk to us a little bit about, underneath the engine here?
Yeah, so we have the only end-to-end solution of its kind. It's a proprietary process that's foundational in its approach. What we're doing at its core, we're not competing with a Sora, a VO3, a Runway, a Kling. There's a lot of competition in that space. But fundamentally, those tools, which are what they are at the end of the day, won't get you from point A to point B. What we're doing, we're not creating tools here, right? It's like a car, right? You might have a steering wheel or a tire, but fundamentally, an auto parts store isn't going to compete with a Ford, a GM, or a Tesla.
Well, you are using tools, right? You're using technology and LLMs, I'm sure, to create these assets. So are you using like multi-stack? Are you using LLMs from different providers? Like, is everything proprietary here? Like,
yeah,
break
absolutely.
it down for me a little.
So we are leveraging every powerful off-the-shelf tool that can add anything to our tech stack, and there's a lot of competition in that space. What there's no competition in is in the space of end-to-end creation.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing, and the technology of the tools are going to change. So we need to be able to change those up on a moment's notice. From day to day, we've seen this morning. I mean, there are announcements coming out every day about the shifts in technology. So in order to stay nimble, we need to be flexible, and we're not burying our head in the sands and trying to compete with what's already there. We're competing with ourselves and ourselves yesterday.
Your artists, this team, are constantly kind of trying these new models, integrating them where they work. It's kind of like almost a day-to-day workflow of just kind of testing. It's like one big test bed happening too in the background.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But we're not just testing, we're using, and we're not just using it, we're using it for the best in the world. So we're doing global, world-class marketing, leveraging the most cutting-edge tools. And we have access to over 100 creatives. These are human creatives. That part is not going away. We have AI artists. We have a whole host of about a dozen different titles that come under this new paradigm. And so each week, it's funny, each week we'll gain a new member of a team from a major player, and they'll talk about how their teams are decreasing and how each week our teams are increasing. So it's in real time. We're seeing the change, and it's powerful and palpable.
So from a buyer perspective, these big brand deals, you mentioned some of the Fortune 500s there. How are their performance metrics changing in this, new type of media? Like, are they still measuring all the same things I'm sure they were measuring 10 years ago? Or like, what is really changing in terms of how they're looking at the market and looking at the impact?
I've always been frustrated with the paradigm of marketing that looks at all of these metrics that ultimately don't move the needle for real businesses.
Like impressions, for example?
Right,
like
impressions.
driving by a billboard, yeah.
Right, and by the way, we have an ad today that's in Times Square that's showing in front of 1.5 million people every day. Now, does that move the needle? Absolutely not. Not if it's not powerful content. That's why, yes, it's more affordable and more efficient, but ultimately being more effective, that's what changes the game. So for major ads and major brands, we're seeing them selling out their products in a matter of minutes online that they've never seen before. That moves the needle.
Wow. And how are they measuring the click-through there? Are they, how are you really understanding the buyer opportunity for that journey, right? Is it based on their kind of social media plays? Like, what are these new metrics of the future, if you like?
So we can get really granular with data, and we have a proprietary back end that we provide access to that has all of the data baked in. Each element of data that you've discussed is baked in on the back end. But at the end of the day, for me, what really moves the needle has to do with what the brands are focused on, which is ultimately, bottom line, delivery mechanisms, which means we can have all the impressions in the world, but if we're not selling the specific item to the specific buyers, and on top of that, moving the brand forward in a increasingly disruptive marketplace.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because you don't really think about brands at a SKU level, per se.
That's right.
And we haven't, but I think in this futuristic world we're living in, you're going to have no choice but to do that, right? Because, you know, certain lines within all brands, you know, lead, and then they kind of carry parts of the rest, right? And I think it's becoming such a attention deficit economy too, that, you know, how that will continue. I think that's a really interesting space.
Yeah, and we're bringing together the best of brand strategy from Madison Avenue, coupled with the best of technology from Silicon Valley, coupled with the best of Hollywood storytelling, and bringing all of those elements together for an end-to-end solution. And that's what's most important at the end of the day.
So tell me a little bit about, you know, AI and the space around ownership, creative license, you know, what you're kind of seeing in that space, because I'm sure it's a big conversation, right? We see it all the time in mainstream media, you know, celebrities, some artists, writers,
Absolutely.
You know, how you own the asset, who really owns the IP. You know, is that filtering into your work?
Absolutely, and it's important that we focus on three primary challenges in this space. One are the legal questions, right? Are we working foundationally with clean and ethically sourced data? That's really important, because as we've seen, that can lead to not only legal problems, ethical problems. And the second, which is a subset of that, has to do with public relations problems, right? So we're seeing backlash from Coca-Cola, from some of these large examples of major brands that come into this space but aren't necessarily playing to the underlying story that moves brands forward at their core.
Okay.
And then ultimately, are these really going to perform better? Do they look and feel realistic, or are these going to be slop that are put together? And when you piece all of those together, and you can address each of those paradigms, game over.
Yeah, wow. Okay, well, tell me, close us out here. Tell us what's ahead for you and the team at Ritual Ads. You know, what does the next 12 months look like, and what are your big bets? What are you chasing?
At Ritual Ads, we're doubling down on this process. I've never been more excited. We are uniquely positioned in this space. We're working with more and more brands on a monthly basis. And 2026 is going to be incredibly exciting, not just for brands, but for investors, for our team members, and ultimately for the consumers that we're able to better serve.
Love it. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on theCUBE. Fascinating conversation. Also, same day as Time Person of the Year. So big day for media today. Who knows what the road ahead looks like, but certainly wish you guys all the best.
Thank you for having us, Gemma. Pleasure to be here.
I'm Gemma Allen here at theCUBE studio at the New York Stock Exchange, where we're connecting Silicon Valley to Wall Street. Thanks so much for watching.